Welcome back to another review here at Big Gold Belt Media. It is your boy Damon G, and I got Terrell over on the side of me, and we really did do this part 2 shit, didn't we? We did this part 2 of Justice League Cross RWBY, or RWBY Cross Justice League, whatever way you want to say it. We saw part 1, and if you want to see our review for that one, go back on the channel and check that out. But we were hoping for the best, right, Terrell? We were hoping that this was going to be better. Was it?
So as far as part 2, I would say it's probably the most positive thing I'm going to say is I liked this one more because it was focused more in the actual DC world, and we got to see the heroes and our heroes and their actual element. And I think that's what made the movie a little bit more enjoyable for me, is because we weren't in that RWBY world with the weird magic and stuff like that. But that's just my bias because I don't like RWBY. But you know, but like I said, it's definitely a better than the first one. I'll say that.
Okay, I'll give you that because it was better. Like, I'll admit it, it was better. And like I told you before we jumped on the air, like I fell asleep. I was bored in the first like 20 minutes of it. You know what I'm saying? I was bored and I fell asleep. But then when we streamed it, you know, I was able to watch the rest of the movie. What I found interesting, I went back and I listened to the voice cast, and they replaced the actor who did Superman. They replaced Wonder Woman. If you go back on like Wikipedia or something, like, and David Dalsmalchian was the Flash. He wasn't the Flash in part 1. So they added higher level voice actors for part 2. But I still think David Dalsmalchian's Flash was boring as hell. Like, he was one of my negatives throughout this whole movie. And David Dalsmalchian is a great effing actor. Just he didn't have it for me.
Maybe because I was just so zoned out in the movie, it just as a whole, like I didn't even notice the voice acting, which is wild because that's usually a standout for me.
And that was one of the first things I noticed. I'm like, yo, this does not sound right. Who is this? Shea Winningham. I know he's done voiceover stuff. He's the voice of Guile in the the Street Fighter games recently. But man, my guy, you do not pull off Superman well at all. You sounded like you had to stick up your butt more than normal, Clark. Okay. Well, hello, RWBY.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they gave Superman like a deeper voice. Not to say that like Superman doesn't have like a commanding tone, but it never felt that gruff like that. You know, like that, like a army sergeant kind of voice, right? Yeah. Like you just said,
and that's what I got. He just sounded like an army dude, to your point, right? So that was one thing I didn't like. And I'm not gonna poop on the entire movie. There were some things I liked, but right off rip, like in the first like 5 seconds, I'm like, okay, I don't like Superman's voice. Oh, this art style. Oh no, the art style. Because I know Nadia's probably saw it, and she probably was like, this fucking art style. Because we've been hating this from like day 1. Thoughts?
I mean, it's I wrote that down. I was just like, I still hate the animation for this. But this is like, because they tried to do a thing too where in the first one the DC characters match the style and
of the RWBY
the look of that world over there. Yeah, and then when they came over to the second part, the RWBY character was supposed to look like them, but I'm like, they look the same. It wasn't like too much of a change. But like, I don't know, man. I don't even know what that style is called. I guess it's like a CG, is it like a CGI or whatever it's called? Yeah, I'm not a fan of it. I hate it when they do it in like regular anime too. It feels cheap. I mean, I'm sure this works for them. I mean, RWBY has like 60 plus episodes, so I mean, like it just feels cheap. It just doesn't. It looks weird in motion. Like it's not the fight. This is not the style I would use to animate fight scenes. And every time I saw a fight scene, I'm like, man, this looks weird. But yeah, I need this animation, this particular style to just die here. Like this is where it needs to be. Yeah.
It needs to end.
I mean, I'm sure it works for what it needs to work for in RWBY, but it just doesn't work for this at all. Like at all. I'm not a fan. I didn't like the styles of any of the DC characters once they came over. I was like, man, they look I almost want to say they look better with their little cutesy styles over in the RWBY side of things. Yeah, but when they got over it just looked terrible. Like it was. I'm like, did we draw this? Like this was not look good at all.
Like, did they give Wonder Woman rosy cheeks like she was an old school anime girl? I'm like, what?
I'm looking at it now. Yeah. It just hold on. Yeah, part 2. Yeah, you're definitely right. They definitely recasted the entire team. Wow. Yeah. They definitely made her look more. Yeah, they definitely made her look more like almost like a doll, a little bit. Yeah.
That's the perfect way to describe. They made the DC characters look like dolls. Because if you look at Canary, you look at even Jessica, like, and I'll admit, I'm like, was Jessica this thick in the first movie? Because whoever did this art style with her costume, I was like, did she just get buff between part 1 and part 2? Because damn, it was like muscle mommy in the
she was
house,
definitely
like for real.
She was definitely a lot sleeker, a lot like almost like a kid. Like she had a kid. Like they all look like kids in the other version of themselves. Like Superman didn't look as manly. And I don't know use that term. He didn't look as buff. Like everybody looks like they were like 15-year-olds, like in the other side on part 1.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden now they just grown folk now. Like bam, like, okay, Green Lantern. I mean,
they even make a comment. They make a comment about it. They're like, "Oh, that's what you guys are like." Oh, yeah, XYZ. But yeah, like, the animation just overall, man. I said I don't want to sound like I'm shitting on the movie or anything like that, but it's just I just don't like it, and that didn't like overall affect my. It's not something that I will. It's not something that I will want to look at more than once. Unfortunately, I had to because it's part 2. But don't use this again. Go ahead.
I'm with you. Just throw it all out. Again, you and I were not the target audience for this. I get that, but we still have to review it as objectively as possible. And I'm be objective and not poop on this thing. But my God, the fluidity of the animation was horrible. Like at the end when they're all running like this and you see Batman running all stiff and whatnot, I'm like, yo, they hurt my soul watching this.
Now something that you mentioned the voice acting, maybe they intentionally did the voice acting thing to kind of like differentiate the voices. So that makes more sense than I think about it. And I'm looking at the cast now. And MJF was Killer Croc.
I didn't know that. I'm like, what? Max Friedman. What are you talking about? Like, oh, it is Max. Like it's MJF. Yeah, getting that WB money.
Maybe I'm so used to him talking to his wrestling persona, I didn't even recognize him at all. So, shout out to him, man, for taking the acting game. Wish this wasn't your first thing, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, basically, he's in the Iron Claw too. So now it's like, oh, now he's just gonna be in movies and stuff. So good for him. Yeah, branch out of wrestling, bro.
What'd you think about the overall story of this? Like, part 2 was basically like, Kilgore comes over and somehow outside of the virtual reality they were stuck in, which I think they did explain it in part 1 how they all got in like the chamber, like the VR thing.
Yeah,
and that just went out the door. This one, I feel like they really loosely explain how Ruby and them are able to come over to their side. I guess they use Jessica's power of the Green Lantern ring to open up a portal.
Didn't know they could do that.
But what do you think about
to answer your question, like the story didn't flow well for me. Like I know it's a continuation of a Kilgore thing, but and the big RWBY villain reveal at the end, I'm like, this is the dude that's giving y'all trouble. Like
I was disappointed. I was like, man, this already sucked, and y'all just made it worse. I was so disappointed, mainly because again, I'm pretty sure you don't, but I had no knowledge of the characters of RWBY. I feel like that would have had bigger impact if we knew more about the world of RWBY and the characters. And I mean, like I said, like this, we're not the audience, and so. Like it's a lot harder to like, oh man, RWBY's getting a crossover with the Justice League, and I'm pretty sure people that love that show probably eating this up. Like, oh man, I can't believe that's who it was. I'm sitting here like, who? And it just went over my head because like I just like, oh okay, this guy sucks. I'm thinking it was gonna be somebody more so because this is part 2 from that side of things. You know what I mean? But again, we were like, and my first theory, which was and it's not a spoiler, but like my first theory is that I thought it was Brainiac, and I was wrong. I was so wrong. I was so wrong that it hurt my feelings that I was wrong. I was like, oh, okay, that probably would have been better. But, okay, but yeah, the story, man, was just lacking. It just felt real shoestring. It was bare bones. Like shout outs. I mean, I don't want to say shout out to the writers, but this could have been better, man. They telling me there was no other story that y'all could have worked for this. Like, it just. I mean, again, time constraints are a big thing for these movies because they only got like an hour or so to really like tell the story they need to tell. Make sure everybody gets scenes, stuff like that. So I get it. It's not a 2 hour for at least an hour and a half. Probably would have been better, but yeah, it just wasn't enough here, man. Very, very bare minimum on making stuff make sense. A lot of plot holes, which is what I wrote down. Lots of plot holes, unfortunately, and just overall, it was just weak. But yeah, that was me on the story.
No, and I'm with you. Like the story wasn't great at all. It flowed irregularly. They took Batman out in the first 10 minutes of the movie, and then we don't see him for a good third of it or half of the movie. And
that was another point. I'm like he was already felt like he was a hindrance in the first one. Like he just had nothing to do. And then they gave him powers and wings, and the other one, and it was like this one. He just felt so useless, like so useless. Like why is Batman even here? And then they find a way to like take him out for at least like 70% of the movie. So
lame.
I was a little disappointed about the lack of Batman here. So
I know some people are gonna say it. I know some people are going to say it, but the message, the girl power narrative, did you feel it was a little too much?
No, because I'm pretty sure that's probably the majority of what that show is, what RWBY is. So I'm pretty sure that was planted where it to be. I mean, at that point, I just didn't care anymore. Like what they were talking about. I mean, like I said, I'm pretty sure like the people that love RWBY were like, man, these team ups are everything that I wanted them to be. But it also felt like now that I'm opening my brain a little bit, it seems like they almost found a way to make the DC characters weaker here and the other characters stronger. Like appear to be stronger the same way they did. Well, not really, because it felt like when they came over to their world, they didn't have any powers or abilities or anything like that they could use. Right. So I don't know. Maybe like I said, that could have been better on that end. But like I said, it just went over my head as far as like the girl power stuff like that. No, it didn't bother me at all. It just felt like that was probably yeah. It felt like that's what the show's natural element is. So it is what it is. But like I said, overall, I mean, I definitely, I don't want this to be the thing that stops these crossover movies. I don't think this needed to be 2 parts. I don't think we could have put this on one disc. We could have put this on one. I could have threw this together. I mean, it just felt like a cash grab to me. Like as far as doing the part 1, part 2, like I mean, as far as like the slate of DC stuff that we know is coming, this is by far like the weakest thing they put on the list in the last couple of years. And we've got crossovers with Ninja Turtles, bro. Yeah, and I love that. I love that movie. But
and didn't we have like a blaxploitation era Batman cartoon recently?
Yeah, that sucks. Yeah, I did not like that. Yeah,
no, I don't like it either. so I get the idea that this was like shovelware. Like, all right, we made it. We gotta put it out there. But again, we are not the target audience of the RWBY folk, and that's fine. But just I wasn't interested. I thought part 2 was better than part 1, but that's not saying much because we didn't like part 1 either. So,
I'm gonna air something out. I bought both of these movies, right? Because like, and I got them. They were pretty cheap. So like, I don't want to think that I spent like a bunch of money, but I bought them mainly because I want the train to keep going, and they rely on the funds of that to keep that going. And mainly because I bought part 1 and I was obliged to buy part 2. But like I said, I bought both of these movies, so I'm half the problem as to probably why they're gonna continue to make these movies. But again, I don't want to go into this and say this movie was bad. I'm not saying the movie is terrible. I'm just saying from my point of view, from somebody that's never watched RWBY, that's never played, any of that stuff, the Fortnite crossovers or anything that those kids are into. Like I said, it just wasn't hitting for me. And I love the Justice League, and it just took me out of it.
And I think that's exactly it. Like for you and me, we see the Justice League or DC in a different light with some of these team ups that just don't make sense to us. Again,
right.
Something for everybody. I can dig that. But no, I'm not going to say it was bad. I'm going to say I am completely indifferent to this movie, which is even worse because it felt like one big pile of meh. And sometimes that happens. There's movies you're just not entranced with. And in this situation, RWBY Justice League crossover part 2 did not do that for me. I think if we're talking about the animation being, cookie cutter or just like, they mailed it in, the voice acting, decent. But again, you bring in, someone like David Dastmalchian and you make him a bit character because Flash had his own weird psychological hangups in this movie from the first part, but the performances still felt flat. And I'm like, why? How? This is your gig. Why is this so flat? And I can't think of anything redeeming aside from the fact that they made Green Lantern thick as a brick house, and I'm like, hello, how you doing? Like that that was it. And then Canary was there, and I'm like, why is Canary here? All right, whatever. Yeah. Jamie Chung's the voice actress. I can rock with that. All right.
So they show the appearance of other characters that's supposed to be like in the world, but don't show them. So like other superheroes, like they had that one scene where it's just like, yeah, this is what's going on around the world, XYZ, and then they don't show anything else. So I don't know. Like I said, hopefully, I'm gonna say, as somebody that has done press for some of these these DC animated movies, I haven't seen anything for this. I haven't seen any of the voice talent talk about it. I honestly don't even think it even got promoted like that. Like
could it, because of the strike? Could it be promoted?
Possibly, because I definitely know the next movie that they have coming out, that's getting a lot of hype. So I mean, like I said, because of the strike, maybe that could be the reason why it's affected. But I would like to see like the overall sales of this movie, and I would like to see from maybe somebody younger's point of view, like a kid that's watching this for the first time. Like I would like to see like how they would enjoy this versus me, because I'm pretty sure like you're not really paying attention to certain animation and stuff like that as a kid. You're like, oh, talking characters,
fight scenes,
So, but kids want quality too, so that's not really an excuse. So we'll see. So like I said, overall part 2, like that, about being better than the first one, it's not really saying much. Like I said, I just like I said, I wish the story was a little bit better. I wish they would have maybe done something a little bit more collaborative, that felt more collaborative with the DC universe, other than the skins of the DC characters being there, because it just doesn't feel like they utilized the DC world in this one at all, to me. But like I said, this is not getting a second watch for me at all. It just
you have the DVDs.
Yeah, the Blu-rays. Yeah.
You're part of the problem. Like you said, you're part of the problem.
I'm trying to keep the ball rolling on this animation game, because I feel like every time I go to one of those press things, they always say like, as long as the last one is successful, the next one gets made. And so the success of whether or not they do another one is based upon is based upon the sales of the last one, and I'm not even sure how that goes now, because most people are buying it like digitally, or they're getting it however they're getting it. But
yeah,
like I said, this is definitely like a what do you say, like a pit stop in the DC animation train. This is not where I would stop and say, man, I need to watch this. So
this will not be a second watch for me either. I'll yell at me in the comments. I don't care. All I'm gonna say is I accept that this wasn't for me, but I didn't like it. And like we said, it's better than the first one, but that's not saying much. Is there anything I actually liked about it when it ended?
I like so there was like a couple scenes where Superman had his moments. He felt like a hero. There was a couple scenes with Wonder Woman where she teamed up with the characters. Where it was pretty cool. I do like some of the new abilities they gave the RWBY characters, which felt like the same ability they already had. But I do like some of it. Like I said, I just wish, because they do show some of the DC villains, which I wish they would have had more to do.
Weather Wizard. Weather Wizard.
Yeah. I was like, that's who y'all picked. Like out of all the characters, so you do get some special guest appearances of some other characters that we didn't mention. But other than that, like everybody else just felt like background. Like they just had no involvement whatsoever. So other than that, I mean, that was the highlights for me.
I will say the one thing I actually did enjoy, let me run that back. It wasn't that it ended. I actually was more interested in the RWBY characters this time around, because I felt like there was actual stuff they were going through, in this.
Right.
There's like a, RWBY herself, Ruby Rose is going through like a death wish kind of thing, based on the first part, and her sister's worried about her. And, it's a little bit of like fish out of water syndrome, which I got more from the RWBY characters than I did from when the DC characters went to their universe. And Bruce tells her, one of them, I'm happy you found your home. It's like, then they made the jokes about Gotham City. It's like, man, if I had to live here, I'd be like Batman too. I'd be grumpy too if I was living in Gotham City. They were roasting him at every turn. It's like, yo, you did Batman dirty in this movie. Like, legitimately, they roasted him. They made him a bit part, and they sidelined him. And I couldn't stand his performance. This movie made me despise Batman, and that almost never happens. So you did something right.
Majority of movies
you made me hate Batman. Go figure. But overall, if you had to give us a letter grade or number grade, what would you give this?
If I had to give this a number grade, it gets a 2.5 out of 5.
You're better than me. I gave it a 2 out of 5. So yeah, that's
and I'm giving it the half just because it's in the DC world now.
Oh God! Do we need another crossover?
From RWBY, no.
Exactly. Okay, you wanted to end here. No. You don't want part 3, part 4.
No, there's other there's other crossovers I want to see them do with DC animated, but I'm not sure how this got drawn on the short straw. But like I said, we don't need it again. They did it. It's cool. We can move on.
That's going to end it here, because I feel the same way about like you do. It's just, please, let's not make this ever again. So that's what we think here at Big Gold Belt Media. Let us know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. BigGoldBelt.com, your one-stop shop for all things nerd culture, entertainment, wrestling, sports. You want it, we got it. Go over there. The drive to 35,000 subscribers, hopefully by the end of the year, with all the work the team's been doing. Where can people find you, Taro?
You found me at Around the Geek at ATG Podcast on what was known as Twitter, on Instagram at Around the Geek as well. So no, sorry, it's all Around the Geek. So you can find me on there and check me out and hear me talk about Tokusatsu, Kamen Rider, all that good stuff. That's not RWBY.
And you can find me at Damon G Show across the board, where I am going back to hosting. You see behind me the Retro Cartoon Rewatch, where I take cartoons from the 70s to the 2000s. I watch them back in real time, and I let you know whether or not they suck over on twitch.tv/Damon G Show. But again, this has been our review for RWBY Cross Justice League Part 2, and let's just hope it ends here. Let us know in the comments what you think. Catch you next time.
See.